This is the story of a woman who was shot twice in the head inside her own van, and the 6 years it took to prove that the man who called 911 that night was the one who pulled the trigger. May 2nd, 2017, Cullman, Alabama. 32-year-old Tiffany Crawford was found dead in a family vehicle outside her home, and her husband told police she had killed herself. Proving otherwise took a state medical examiner willing to question the easy explanation, a reopened investigation, and a jury that sat with hours of conflicting testimony before landing on the truth. Understanding who Tiffany Crawford was to the people around her matters before we get into the night she died. Born on February 28, 1985, she went on to earn her degree in elementary education from Athens State University in 2009, and from there, she built a career as a preschool teacher. 2 young children came out of her marriage, a son named Tristan and a daughter named Symphony, and by all accounts, she poured herself into being their mother. Around 2013, she started something bigger than her own household, a faith-based Facebook group called Mothers Helping Mothers. It grew into a real community, and according to CBS News, membership had reached about 9,000 women by the time Tiffany died. To them, she was encouragement in a group text. To her family, the phrase that came up again and again at her memorial was devoted wife and mother. Jason Dwayne Crawford became her husband around 2011, and this wasn't a first marriage for either of them. Jason brought a son, Logan, from an earlier relationship into the picture, and by CBS's account, he and Tiffany had already made it past the 6-year mark by the time she died. Behind that public image, the marriage was coming apart in the months before her death. Trial testimony later revealed an affair with a man named Kyle Sunday, a relationship that had already ended by the spring of 2017. What came next looks like someone quietly rebuilding. A cashier job at Publix, reportedly to save money, and on May 1st, a first counseling session, where she showed up nervous but excited, according to the people who spoke with her. Jason had a different version of those final weeks. On the stand, he admitted confronting Tiffany about the affair, admitted telling her to take her ring off, and admitted calling her a whore. Pressed on whether that label applied while he himself was involved with her during her previous marriage, his answer was blunt. She was a whore the whole time. That's the tension sitting underneath everything that happened on the night of May 2nd, 2017. Jason called 911 that night, and his words to the dispatcher, according to CBS News, were simple: "My wife is shot. I need someone out here, please." Something about that call bothered investigators from the start. Alabama State Bureau of Investigation agent Joe Parrish put it this way to CBS: "It was very cold. It didn't sound like somebody that was worried about his wife."
911, Miss Where's your emergent?
My wife is shot. I need someone out here, please.
Hey, what's the address? Okay, and tell me exactly what's going on.
My wife is shot. She's laying in the van.
Who has she been shot by?
Please have an end of tonight, please.
Sir, I'm going to need some more information from you. Where has she been shot?
She's been shot in the head.
Deputy Brandon Woods was first on scene, and what he found was Tiffany leaning over the center console of the family van, shot twice in the head, once to the left jaw or chin and once to the left temple. In her left hand sat a pink .38 caliber revolver, reportedly a gift from her father-in-law the previous winter. And here's the problem that would haunt this case for years: Tiffany was right-handed. According to Jason, none of that mattered because she had shot herself in the van after he refused to let her into the house following their argument about the affair. A conflict of interest tainted this investigation from the very first hour. Jason's mother, Rhonda Crawford, worked as an office manager for the Cullman County Sheriff's Office, and because of that connection, the case moved to the Alabama State Bureau of Investigation the very next day, May 3rd, 2017. By then, the damage was already done. Deputies had covered the van, the actual crime scene, with a tarp overnight, then released it back to the family, who cleaned it out around noon on May 3rd. Jason's father, Chris Crawford, later testified that while cleaning the vehicle, he found several of Tiffany's teeth lodged in the air conditioning vents, and he also found and read her journal, which had been left inside. A deputy called soon after to say the van was needed as evidence. The call came too late. Sheriff Matt Gentry later defended releasing the vehicle, insisting it had already been photographed, processed, and found to hold nothing of evidentiary value. Even he acknowledged the contradiction, though, telling CBS, "We worked it like a homicide, but it was treated like a suicide. Nobody tested Jason for gunshot residue. Nobody collected his clothing." The case turned on the autopsy. Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences medical examiner Dr. Valerie Green looked at the physical evidence and found several things that didn't line up with a self-inflicted wound. 10 inches. That's the minimum distance from which the shot to Tiffany's temple had been fired, according to Dr. Green. Too far for her own arm to have reached, and without the soot or stippling you'd expect from a contact wound. She also flagged something about the scene itself. There was no blood on the driver's door. "I didn't see any blood on that door. I didn't see any blood on the glass or the window," she told CBS, and her read on that absence was pointed. "I think that door is open because he was standing there." DNA analyst Angela Fletcher added another layer, finding male DNA on the gun's trigger and grip. It couldn't be pinned to one person with certainty, since both Tiffany's father-in-law, who'd given her the gun, and her brother had handled the weapon at various points. But it was one more thread pulling against the suicide story. Nearly a year after Tiffany died, on March 8, 2018, Dr. Green made it official and ruled her death a homicide. Armed with that ruling, a Cullman County grand jury indicted Jason Crawford on one count of murder on May 17, 2018. He turned himself in 4 days later, on May 21st, and walked out the same day on a $100,000 property bond. The road to trial was anything but quick after that. More than 10 continuances pushed the case back, according to the Cullman Tribune, and what should have been a matter of months stretched into roughly 5.5 years between Tiffany's death and a verdict. The community didn't let that gap go quiet, though. Around May 2018, members of Mothers Helping Mothers dedicated a memorial buddy bench to Tiffany at Sportsman Lake Park in Cullman, and Jason reportedly showed up to the dedication himself. The inscription on that bench still reads, "Your life was a blessing, your memory a treasure. You are loved beyond words and missed beyond measure." Jury selection began on November 14, 2022, and over the following days, Assistant District Attorney Jeff Roberts walked the prosecution's case through the forensics, the distance of the temple shot, the missing blood on the driver's door, a gun found in the wrong hand, and DNA on the trigger that pointed away from suicide. Robert Tootin and Nicholas Heatherly led the defense, and their argument centered on what wasn't there. No blood on Jason, no gunshot residue test ever performed, nothing that put his hands on the weapon at the moment it fired. Their own expert, former Alabama Chief Medical Examiner Dr. James Lauritsen, testified that Tiffany could have shot herself twice, and that her hair may have filtered gunpowder residue enough to make the true muzzle distance impossible to pin down. Dr. Green wasn't convinced, telling the court she had already accounted for that possibility and still expected to see more abrasion than the body showed. The defense also put Jason's teenage son, Logan, on the stand, and he testified to hearing a shot, a scream, and another shot from inside the house that night. Testimony aimed at backing up Jason's claim that Tiffany had been alone in the van when the first shot went off. Jason took the stand himself on November 18, 2022, and by the Cullman Tribune's account, it did not go smoothly. He laughed more than once during his testimony, including while describing Tiffany crying in the van, and at one point tried answering an objection on his own, prompting the judge to cut him off. "I'm not asking you." Asked point-blank whether he had killed his wife, his answer was no. Deliberations started that afternoon around 3:15 p.m., and the jury didn't move fast. Around 5:20 p.m., they sent word asking for two things: the officer's body camera footage from the scene and the original 911 recording. That request ended up deciding everything. Juror Megan Brock later walked CBS News through what happened when the jury listened to that 911 call a second time. On the recording, Jason told the dispatcher the gun was laying beside Tiffany, but the body camera footage from the scene told a different story, showing the revolver still in her hand. "When we listened to that 911 call again, that was it," Brock said. "That was it." At 8:05 p.m. on November 18, 2022, the jury came back with a guilty verdict. First-degree murder. Judge Martha Williams handed down the sentence on March 10, 2023, 99 years, with parole eligibility not arriving until Jason had served 15 of them. Tiffany's mother, Cheryl McGuckin, spoke directly to him at sentencing. "Jason, if not you, who? You were there. You know the truth." What made those words carry weight was where they'd come from, because for years McGuckin had believed in his innocence, and it was only after watching the trial evidence unfold that she changed her mind. "I now believe that he did kill her," she said afterward. It made it painfully obvious. The conviction wasn't the end of it. Jason appealed, and on December 1st, 2023, the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals denied his application for rehearing, leaving the conviction in place. He's serving that 99-year sentence now, with parole eligibility not arriving until around 2038, and he still maintains he's innocent.